this interesting. All right, we are joined today with a webcam that will not sit still and two members of ours, Ian Ahles and Will Towne. Uh, Good evening, gentlemen. Let's see if I can get this webcam sorted. I'm making it entertaining for people on YouTube.
Can you just say you're currently in an earthquake
Yeah,
and
there we go. There we go. Let's. I'll make it a gonzo journalism. There we go. Improv.
You're in Canberra, aren't you? That.
Hey, nah, I'm in Victoria.
Oh, Victoria. Okay,
Yeah.
there's the occasional earthquake down there.
Yeah, we had one during lockdown actually, and yeah.
Yeah,
Anyways, how's things going up there in Brisbane, guys?
Yeah,
not too shabby.
pretty windy today.
Yeah, yeah.
Just as far
Cold,
as
cold for Brisbane. Not cold like down there, but yeah, we're not used to it, so it feels really cold.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm missing Brisbane winter, to be honest. So yeah, yeah. So you guys have had a fair bit going on. So you've had your recent release, Between Dreams and the Waking World, which released on July the 10th,
Yep.
and you've just had your LP launch show. How'd that go? That was on Friday, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a fun night. Fun night. We had some cool bands. We had Nucleosaurus Rex and Zagtar and Tribute of the Beast, an Iron Maiden band. And do you remember the name of the band that filled in at the last second?
the Disdained.
Yeah, we had a band pull out on the day, and another band, the Disdain, joined in. So
That was good. Some
yeah,
nice
they did well.
punky energy and yeah, it
Awesome.
was a nice little thing
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Typical Brisbane where it's a diverse lineup because it's not like Melbourne where you can actually go, bigger city like Melbourne or Sydney where you've got lineups and bills where it's like one genre. With Brisbane, I found like when I was playing in a band there, like some of the lineups are just like you get everything, which is
there.
it's nice in a way. Like, it's an interesting mix of people and stuff. So how's the crowd response like to your set?
Yeah, I thought we had a really good reception.
Yeah.
Everyone was into it.
I,
Yeah,
I think we always tend to surprise people a bit just because
Mm.
a lot of the bands and they're going like they're fantastic. And when we go on, that's all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, we're starting with the classical guitar. Okay,
Yeah.
sure, that's and there's the impact of like bam when it does hit. So I
Yeah.
think people are always a bit not taken aback per se, but there's a bit more surprise with us sometimes. So
Mm.
to our advantage, yeah.
Well, for yourself, Will, you play in a Riverside Guitar Ensemble, is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, that's where Ian and I we met back in 2011 when we were doing our classical guitar degrees at the Conservatorium, and Ian can obviously talk more about the ensemble side. But yeah, that's I think that's still going on under Karen Sharp's direction, a wonderful internationally renowned Aussie classical guitarist, and keeping us
Mm.
you know in gigs and everything, and yeah, and it's nice to have that. For lack of a better term, familiarity within Ailes as well, just to, if anything, just to justify our degrees.
Yeah, man. You got to make that
justify your
worth it,
existence.
doesn't it?
It's like, oh, well, we did this, so we may as well check this on. But as I said, I think that that extra element works really well,
Yeah.
and to
Yeah.
have it done with someone who actually can play classical guitar very well, I think is um,
Oh,
very
thank
cool.
you.
Yeah, yeah, we're not going to get me to do it. Goodness gracious, no.
Why not? You play very well.
Well, it's your band anyway.
So, so Ian, so you and you know what, Will, you're right because the latest single clips up on YouTube. So the proof's in the pudding. We can actually physically see you guys playing, and it is quite technical stuff. And Will, you mentioned that there's a very strong Spanish influence on that single. I'm just forgetting that something spiritual. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I almost was like, hang on, am I interviewing? Oh, well, okay, there's the medal. Um, very much like Latin flamenco inspired, especially with that intro. Is that a byline through the whole album, or have you guys got a bit more of a diverse influence across the record?
We have some very diverse influences, but that
Mm.
does pop its head up on quite a few tracks. So there's two like little solo pieces as well, like a classical guitar solo called Therese, which I actually wrote when I was part of something called the Stairwell Project, which is
Mm.
music in hospitals.
Mm.
There's a little phrase at the start that goes do do do, and that's actually the sound of the machine that was in the oncology ward at the Royal Brisbane. And
It's interesting where
kind of,
influences come from, hey?
yeah, so I kind of, that sort of made its way into the piece that was kind of written about that experience. Therese was the head of nursing there.
Mm.
And there's a classical guitar concerto that was originally for classical guitar and orchestra, and we did the orchestra part like for metal band, but the
Mm.
classical guitar part's the same. And there's a couple of things with a lute on there as well, because I play a bit of lute as well. So
Mm.
one is a lute solo by the late Australian composer Philip Houghton that kind of is more known as guitar repertoire now, but he originally composed it for lute. And then
Mm.
our cover of Amorphous', who I see you had an interview with recently as well,
Mm-hmm.
Amorphous' Weeper on the Shore. It's on their
Mm.
Elegy album. We did a version of that with lute, and Will's 8 string kind of was the bass guitar.
Finally get to use that low string.
And our bassist is an
Justice.
exceptional flute player,
Mm.
and we had another flutist as well, and the two flutes kind of did the keyboard parts. So
Mm.
that's basically everything with the sort of classical guitar things. The rest is pretty much pure metal. So
Mm. So you guys have a very interesting you have a very interesting mix of, I guess, in terms of songwriting, I quote unquote duties. I know, it's never should be one to stereotype bands like, oh, okay, you're an X role, so you need to do Y. But I noticed Alix, who's also in Born from the Ashes and Puncture Wound, he
Mhm.
actually is
She,
credited. She, oh, sorry.
All good.
Oops. She, my bad. There we go. I'm gonna get cancelled. Um, so Alix is she is credited with writing a lot of the music and lyrics as a drummer, which on so for the liner notes for the latest single, Something Spiritual.
yep.
Mm,
So a lot of what is on this album as well were demos I had written for Born from the Ashes, just kind of
mm,
sort of revamped. And
mm,
so there's that part in the middle where she's doing the crazy drum stuff, and I can't actually remember who influenced who in that section, so I thought I'd better give her a writing credit.
yeah,
I feel she deserved one just for that
yeah,
drum section anyway, because it was just so killer, and I don't think the
mm.
song was quite the same without it. So, yeah, that's kind of the main thing behind that. So,
So how did you guys all sort of there's some loose associations, like obviously there's some associations there with the like the classical ensemble, um, you guys meeting through the conservatorium. How did this band as a whole come together? Was it all centered around the more academic side of things, or just sort of a mix of just curious?
well, a little bit of a mix, I guess.
Mm,
I'd kind of known Monash as well from the con, but he
mm,
graduated on flute there. I kind of discovered he was a bass player and multi-instrumentalist. Like I was doing a lot of musical theatre pitch sort of shows around Brisbane with community theatre, and
mm,
a few shows with Monash, and he'd be playing bass on one, and he was a really good bass player. And um, so when I was kind of putting the band together, it's kind of people who I worked with and was comfortable with, and Will and I, like, we were doing a classical degree, but we were always talking metal.
Always
Like,
just throwing a few riffs.
so it kind of like made sense to get Will into the project straight away, and then Monash was keen, and that's why I threw some flute in there as well, because like I thought it would be a waste of his talents to not do that. and
yeah,
Alix, she did do a cert for music at TAFE, so I guess she's done something on the academic side as well. Not quite as intense as the con, and not as classically, I guess, as sort of classically informed as the con, which is fine though. I don't know how classically informed like you need to be to play blast beats.
Just sitting up the back of Puncture Wound, just like double kicks, and then just like putting your horns up, and you've got like a master's robe on.
That's an idea for
there you go.
Costume. Probably not.
So you guys had come together. You mentioned before that there was an interest in metal, and that's obviously kind of, that's part of what's congealed together into this project. Ian, is this primarily your songwriting, or is it a bit of a mix of everyone else's coming in? And apologies if you're saying, I was sitting there before the interview going, Ahles, 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 Ahles. I don't know.
Ahles is how my dad pronounced our name, so I'm Ahles. Ahles would have been how it was originally pronounced. Like I sourced back to Germany, and it would have to be pronounced that way. So I don't get offended when people pronounce it Ahles. For this release, I'm the primary songwriter because I kind of sort of had everything ready and then put the gig band together around that. But Will's already written a killer song for what will be on the next release, and so next from now on, it's going to be much more collaborative and everyone throwing in music and stuff. For this first album, it's mostly me with some sort of cover tunes on it as well, like 3 cover tunes or
So what were your kind of main influences being the primary songwriter? What were your sort of, obviously, we can speak to, say, like this flamenco guitarist influence there, classical influence, but in terms of metal, who's influenced you? Because I noticed you played in a few other bands as well, Praetorian. Were you also in Dragonsmead?
I was also in Dragonsmead.
Yeah.
So Praetorian was the first band. I don't know if you've heard any, like, we were kind of active in Melbourne around the early 2000s, and we recorded 2 albums. The big influences early on, like we talked about Amorphous earlier, they were a huge influence on me around sort of 96-ish. Not that I was actually playing in bands at that point, but they were one of the first bands to sort of combine death growls and clean vocals and keyboard parts, and it was quite an amazing thing for my young ears to latch onto.
Those 2 things are possible. Hang on a minute.
And it was just done so well, and of course that's become a very common thing since. Like and then sort of a whole range of metal, like sometimes really technical, like things like in the Melbourne scene where I was cutting my teeth, like Alarum, where kind of a big deal already, and that sort of led me towards bands like Death and Atheist, who were exceptional. I don't know if you saw them when they were out recently.
Oh yeah,
that showed my head off.
I think it blew everyone's head off. And just such nice, humble guys too, and met with everyone. Just, man, shout out to Atheist, because just the most humble, nice dudes to be going on stage and playing stuff that brutally technical, and then coming off stage and just shaking everyone's hand. How are you kind of going? So they're a big influence as well.
They were an influence. I think also things like Dream Theater and Opeth was certainly influence. That's where a lot of the ideas for incorporating classical guitar into the music came from. Bands like Opeth. Not that they're specifically classical guitar, but like sort of throughout.
There's a lot of classical motifs that run through the music. I also, listening to your album earlier, funnily enough, Loomis, I detect a bit of a strong Nevermore influence as well.
Really? I am a big fan of Nevermore from back in the day.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
you've got quite a wide sort of grab bag of influences, but it sounds like primarily the ones that spoke to you are that amorphous opeth kind of style where it's
yeah.
merging those
And
almost like a merging.
Another Australian band, Alchemist, actually.
Oh,
They were
yeah.
a big,
Love
big,
it.
just because the diversity of the sounds, I guess
Mm,
that's kind of gave me permission to do that too.
yeah. They did it. I could do it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Thanks for letting us all off the hook, Alchemist.
Pretty
So, in
much.
terms of reception to the album, have you found the reception so far, like in the press and from listeners and everything?
Uh, Pretty good. Like we've had a lot of good comments from people. We've only had the one review so far, but that was a really good review.
Yeah.
Mm,
They basically said we were rewriting the script, so that was like that's
It's
one
like they're
killer thing to say.
it's like they're reviewing our album, right? Just
So that's yeah, and a lot of people have said some great things.
I think
Like,
the best review I got was when we played at PFR Lounge, and one guy who was, a few of them in, he's like, "You fucking guys sound like fucking Opeth," and we were like, "All right,
Oh.
we'll take that as a a good one."
yeah,
It's
and
still high praise. If someone says
Oh
you
yeah, I was
sound
gonna
like
say,
Opeth, doesn't matter how many beers deep they are. That's
he's
an
like, yeah,
honorable
I'm just like, you
claim.
don't know that one.
yeah, and also like a lot of people are like really do like the diversity of sound that's on the album as
Mm,
well. That's one thing that people have told me they enjoy about it anyway. So
It's also
mm,
interesting because, I mean, you always say like the diversity is just so like it can draw everyone in, because I'm sure that's not what you were thinking when you were writing that, when all those parts. But I've had students from all ages, like from kids all the way up to my 67-year-old retiree, and he's saying like, "Oh, I really like this part," because it's just so, the contrast in the sections and everything, which you expect, but to hear it from someone who, you play them anything harder than say Deep Purple, they'd be like, "Oh,"
yeah.
recoiling. It was really cool to hear that. He said, "Oh yeah, no, I listened to the whole thing last night and I really loved it." I just went, "Oh," like, certainly wasn't expecting that.
How did that feel for you as a music teacher with one of your own students listening to your music?
Uh, Imposter syndrome, uh,
Yeah.
just amazingly like, "Oh god, I got to do this." Yeah, no, it's good as well, and I think one of the joys that I always got from my own teachers was not just the knowledge and the technique and everything, but being exposed to stuff that you normally wouldn't sit down and actively listen to. As I
Mm,
said, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a drummer, and then I had my first guitar lesson, and he played, I think it was either Enter Sandman or the Four Horsemen. I was just like, oh, I've got to do that now.
yep.
It was just like
Yeah.
on a dime. I was like, yeah, drums maybe not for me.
The
So
carrot
yeah,
was dangled. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and I'd like to think that a lot of my students, for better or for worse, have been exposed to some of this thing that's just a bit outside
Yeah.
typical sort of four-chord Ed Sheeran, Taylor Swift stuff. And, no offense to them, because, as I said, they've given me a lot of business,
Mm,
the
mm.
kids and the adults coming up saying, "Oh, I want to learn Galway Girl," or whatnot. So it's nice to know that even if they don't, become like a metalhead for life or anything, at least they've been able to see that there is, another side to the guitar, rather than just, your typical campfire top 40 sort of stuff. And especially
Mm,
when, as I said, it's been played with, I think I can lump myself in this, as musicians of like high caliber. So
mm,
yeah,
mm,
it's
mm.
it's just a bit surreal. I don't think it has caught up with me yet, to be honest. It's like, oh yeah, we made this album, whatever. We worked hard on it, we did all this, and then everyone's like, whoa! It's like, oh, cool.
we also recorded it like a year ago as well. So it's been a
Mm,
while between recording and getting it out. So that's that as well. You kind of almost forget it about how it sounds a little bit.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
How was the recording process? So you recorded at Core Studios and you had the album done by Q4 Mastering in Melbourne. How'd you
Yep.
find like the actual recording process for yourself?
Pretty good. The Born from the Ashes album we actually did with Nick Carpenter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He had a different space this time though. Like previously he was like renting a space, but now he's kind
Mm,
of made made a room in the studio in his house basically. So different space, a bit more homely, which was a bit nice.
mm,
But his processes, he's got he's got definite processes that he likes to work to, but they work. They work really well. So yeah, it's kind of like you kind of fall into the it's like you sort of start to understand his patterns of working, and then you can work within that. And then we had a few back and forwards with some different opinions on a couple of things when mixing, but mostly only little things here and there that kind of tweaked along the way. And then the mastering with Aidan Perry. Mastering's just when the magic happens, I think. It's like you get that final mix and you're thinking, yeah, this sounds really good. And then the mastering happens, like, wow, how does that sound?
It's the car detailing versus the, well, you know, it's all relevant. Yeah. Kind of like the shoe shine. Yeah.
Also, the drums, phenomenal. I mean, when we were doing our rehearsals, getting ready for the recording, Alix, she just you know, some new skins. Obviously, you know, everyone's getting all their equipment fresh and everything. But even in rehearsal, we just had to be like, ooh, you know, just that sort of tastiness to it. And then hearing the finished product, and it was interesting as well because, you know, as Ian said, you know, when you're so focused on recording and everything, you're sort of focused on your own part and whatnot, and you know how the song goes, but it's like, oh, okay, I've got to get this part, and hearing it all put together, then all of a sudden it was like, I'm not going to say it was a different song, but it was like, oh, it was like in that moment, I'm like, oh, okay, I understand what Ian was. It's like, and it's awesome, you know.
Yeah. That's awesome. So how are you guys feeling about the future? I mean, this is a pretty burgeoning project at the moment, and things are still kind of like evolving over time. Um, do you guys have anything lined up in terms of like shows or tours or anything like that?
We've got
Anything in that matter?
we've got 3 shows booked coming up.
Okay,
Actually, 2 of them haven't been announced yet, so I won't talk
that's all
about them
right. Mum's the word. Yeah.
Um, and then the List of 7, run by Blackened Records, which is I think Brisbane's only sort of dedicated metal record store. And they put on, I think, 2 of these big gigs a year called the List of 7. So there was one earlier, and then another one, and we're lucky enough to feature on that. And we've had a couple of good shows with interstate bands, and our first gig was actually an international band, which was quite a fortunate thing to occur. But that was like a last minute getting bands to play, because the original tour with Raven, that hyena from Peru.
That's right. Hyena, the Peruvian band.
Like Raven were due to play Brisbane, and due to poor ticket sales, that fell through, and then they were looking for a lineup for that in a hurry. So that's how our first gig came about. We basically jumped on that, and then we played with Thraxis, who are Sydney
Nice. Yep.
thrash band, and did some pretty cool things. So we did that last month, and yeah, a couple of more interstaters coming up with our next couple of gigs. Pretty keen to get to Sydney and Melbourne sometime in the next year as well. So nothing concrete there yet, though.
Yep. Yeah, no little teasers to drop in the podcast interview. That's okay. And in terms of, so for me, like I've been out of I mean, it's funny, the band I helped form, I was the first to leave, Awful Noise in Brisbane. Yeah. So I was, Lyndon and myself were the first 2 to put that band together, and I was the first to go, hey guys, I'm moving interstate. I know I put the band together, but bye. But yeah, in terms of, so I left around 2017, and
Right.
then we had, you know, the whole virus thing to now. I'm curious, both out of personal curiosity, but on the listeners' behalf, like what are sort of some of the changes you've seen in the Brizzy music scene in that time? Like how do you guys see the Brisbane scene evolving at the moment? Like what's the sort of your lay of the land of the music scene up there?
Well, I don't leave my house, so this is going to have to be Ian's answer.
I've kind of sort of been through 3 different periods of Brizzo metal. So Born from the Ashes was kind of active from about 2007 to 2010-ish. And at that stage, it there are a lot of gigs and like weekly gigs that had good turnouts, kind of things. Like there was
Yeah,
a
and Rosie's and
Monstrothic,
Monstrothic. Yeah,
Monstrothic, and
yeah,
Kento ran the Nights at the Step In,
yeah,
the Inferno. That's what it was.
yeah.
This is testing my memory.
It's testing mine too.
And
Yeah,
then I think the first big change in the Brisbane scene and just in general was the lockdown laws. I can't remember when they came in. It was about 2012. Like when
the
if you
lockout
weren't
laws
in
of
a
the
place
hours.
at like 1 or 2 a.m., like then you couldn't get back in. It's
Yeah, yeah, they
yeah.
changed the lockout laws, and it started in the valley and spread through the city,
Yeah,
the whole
and I think
thing.
that's
Yeah.
the first thing that shifted it.
Mm.
So it's a much earlier kind of culture, like gigs start and finish sooner, but also having taken public transport to a few, that's kind of nice because if you're sort of not on your train by midnight,
Yeah, yeah,
it's like, I know the public transport system in Melbourne, like you can sort of catch your trains up like to 2 a.m. or something like that
yeah. It
generally.
depends where you're going, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You can get away with a fair bit more public transport wise. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then Dragonsmead was kind of active before COVID, and yeah, it was not quite as healthy as the sort of noughties, but still good crowds. And I think there's a feeling. The feeling I've got is kind of one of rebuilding a little bit now. It's
Mm,
like most of the gigs, like some get really big turnouts, like
yeah.
when you hit the local gigs, but
Mm.
other ones kind of sort of in the medium range. I think there are some good bands going around, and it's growing again. There are a couple of big festivals like Necrosonic coming up
Yeah,
next
big
month.
one.
That's pretty huge.
Huge,
Like
yeah. Massive
was
lineup.
quite heaps of people actually. Like
Mm,
there last year was a big turnout. So there's things like that going out on which are quite huge. But I think in general, not as healthy as it's been previously, but I think growing again. That's how I
mm,
perceive it. Yeah,
mm. Okay.
yeah.
And in terms of, I think I always like to tie things in a very cliche little bow, in my own way. But I just want to, before I do, I just want to say thank you guys for the chat. It's been a really wonderful chat, getting to listen to hearing like a very interesting project, I must say. And but my last question would be, I get the sense that there's a lot of overlap between classical fans and metal fans. What sort of do you have any kind of particular tips or tricks for say potentially some metalheads who are looking to broaden and strengthen their classical game, or people that are kind of stuck merging the two in terms of songwriting? What kind of advice do you reckon you would give to folks in that situation?
Well, just speaking from me, to be honest, I feel like with me, oh, crikey, that's a hard one to answer. If anything, I actually feel like I'm thinking less classical now. Actually, as I'm going on, like all the technique and everything is there, and also the appreciation for it. But if anything, now for me, it's almost like not a regression, but I find myself being drawn more towards, because I think a lot of people associate, like classical music with complexity, so to
Yeah.
speak. And I think that's where a lot of the overlap comes from with a lot of people, saying like, oh, metal and classical, the overlap. I mean, we're being honest, like metal has a lot more to do with, obviously rock and blues and all of that,
Yeah.
and it does
Yeah.
with classical. But obviously, any music can take its influence from anything, right?
Mm.
So I don't know. That's a hard one for me to say because I think for me, as I said, I sort of started with the whole real interest in that technicality and that classical thing. Like I wanted to hear, the acoustic guitars, like, you hear Battery by Metallica, and it's like, whoa, when you're a kid and you hear the acoustic and you go, whoa, it's so varied. And now all of
Mm.
a sudden, as I said, just after doing all of this and having had the experience, I find that I'm just going back to like, what's a really simple thing? Like I love Godflesh, like I
Oh yeah. Massive.
can't ever
Yeah.
imagine myself at 12, like actually even just liking, like hearing Pulp Whereas now it just da da da, like 4.5 minutes. It's just like, yes, that's what I want. So I don't know. I guess the short answer is that I have no idea. I think one thing I would say, however, I think is to be very honest with what you like and what you don't like, because the more that you are, I think the more you just naturally, you just gravitate towards the stuff that's pure, where the real enjoyment is. Like what did Slavoj Zizek say? Like, if you have to come up with a reason why you love someone, then it's not love. If you have to come up with some sort of reason why you like a particular song, it's like, you're probably just trying to convince yourself for, I don't know, scene points, or your own ego of like, oh, look how cultured I am. So yeah, that's my very long-winded sort of response to that, I guess.
I think you've answered the question, and I think that's actually crucial, is that metal and classical can both be seen as very cerebral, and someone who's classically trained, has played in conservatoriums and ensembles, is saying you don't have to make it like this whole intellectual cerebral exercise. Just doing what you enjoy, what intuits you from the music, the songwriting process. Just go with that. It's
also, if I can just jump in again, interesting that a lot of the stuff that I like, that I guess maybe you would classify as complex, like I'm a huge ska symmetry fan, and obviously anyone who's ever heard the song is just like, whoa, technically, mind-blowing. And it's amazing how many times where, say, Pal Nelson will release an official tab on his Patreon, and you have a look at the rhythm and you go, that's actually incredibly simple. It really is, in terms of what the guitar is just doing, but it's just so dang effective. And I think jamming with Ian and going through these ideas and whatnot has made me realize just how it's very easy just to make it complex for the sake of complicated, just to sort of say, like, it's this and it's this and that.
Is that what you're saying I'm doing?
No, but it was interesting because Ian has, if you've heard the album, he's got such a good approach to songwriting. And then I listened to some of these parts, and there was a part of me that was also surprised. I was like, oh, that's all it is. I mean, it's incredibly effective. I'm like, oh, it's just kind of that, And I've had that in the past when I've been writing. I sort of wrote myself into just like, oh, it's got to be this just for the sake of it. It has to have 300 notes, So I think that's just been a learning thing for me, to sometimes just say, like, well, what does the song need? Does it need to have a little widdly woo, or sometimes is it just good to have that big chug, fuck off power chord part of it?
Sometimes a big slamming riff and a big old dying fetus, thud, 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 and that's all you need. What about you, Ian? What are your sort of thoughts?
Going on from what Will was saying, like a lot of the times the simple ideas are the ones that really hit home when you're listening to something, like even in something very technical. Like I always try, when writing like odd time things and stuff, like to make them groove. So it's not just odd time for odd time's sake. Like I almost try and make it sound like it's not odd time. And sort of doing classical, I was kind of very much the reverse of like most people who do classical music. Like I didn't start off as a kid with a classical teacher. I kind of taught myself initially, had some rock and roll lessons. It wasn't till like I decided to audition for the con in my mid-30s that I got a classical guitar lessons. And like my technique was kind of not great, to put it mildly. So I think if you want to play classical guitar really well, like get a teacher. I think that's important, actually, if you want to do classical guitar. If you want to sort of do classical guitar adjacent things, which a lot of what metal kind of really is, it's probably not as big a deal. Like, but there's a lot of sort of, if there are specific techniques you want to do, a teacher's good, and they can kind of guide you with like tone production and all these really important things in that as well. But I don't only listen to like complicated stuff as well. Like I do like a lot of doom metal. I love doom metal, actually. I like very depressing music.
Don't we all? Don't we all? Look at us black shirts. Yeah, absolutely.
So, and like songwriting is kind of making. I always think of each song as its own little world. I think Will talking about songwriting is kind of put me in the songwriting mindset right now.
Yeah, go for it.
And you make a sound world, and you kind of put it all together, and you connect things. Like, I don't know, I think a lot of processes aren't linear. It's like
Yeah.
within life, within music, within everything. It's kind of
Mm.
like, for one, you don't just have the time to spend all day, every day making that kind of
Analyzing it.
progress.
Yeah.
It's kind of bit here, bit there, and then somewhere along the line you find a time to put them together and make it cohesive, or hopefully cohesive, or not. Like, if you want to be like Mr. Bungle or Dillinger Escape Project, like, you
Yeah.
probably don't have to be cohesive.
I was saying that we were doing a bit of jamming, just having a look at some new ideas, and I think I specifically said it was like a diminished chord. I'm just like, oh, let's just throw a Dillinger chord in there, you know.
Skronk.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's interesting as well because I've had, like, we both have these sort of ideas that are kicking around, and I've had one that I've had in my head. Ian was talking about one of the songs that I'm writing, and apart from me realizing how many other bands I'm ripping off, but I guess, you know, that's everyone else's sort of experience with it. It was a melody that I had in my head literally since I was about 10 years old, from a Game Boy Color game, like one of the final boss music. And when I was writing, I'm like, why does that sound so good? And so, you know, it's been festering away for the better part of like 20 something years. So, and then hearing it there with, you know, distorted guitars, and then just that little germ coming into it. And in speaking with that complexity versus simplicity thing I was talking about, it wasn't even a case of like, oh, this has to be simple or it has to be complex. It was just a case of like, did it scratch that particular itch in my brain? And as soon as I had that, everything just seemed to fall into place. But yeah, it's just interesting where, you know, these little things come from. To find
Yeah. I feel like we could prat on together all night about music, and this could be an 8 hour long podcast if I let it.
Yeah.
But I just want to say thanks again, guys, and we'll have all the details of the new single from your press release, including the link to your new single and links for Between Dreams and the Waking World, which once again, fantastic job. Like, it's a really fantastic record, and you can definitely hear all those influences that you guys spoke about. So I encourage listeners slash viewers slash readers, because we're in a few places, to check it out. And I'd also encourage you, gentlemen, to have a great evening, and hopefully I will see you guys down here in Melbourne sometime if you do hook up some shows.
We're
Yeah, very
definitely keen to head
Very
down.
keen.
So yeah, hopefully soon-ish.
Awesome, fellas. Well, you take it easy and enjoy the nice coolness before that summer humidity hits, all right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Take care, fellas.
Cheers, man. Thank you.
Cheers. See ya.
See ya.